Good afternoon and welcome to our May Orion Ornamental Iron webinar. I'm Deb Barrett, and for the next hour or so we're going to talk about specialty solutions and services when it comes to drapery hardware and window coverings. So let's dive right in. Really, specialty is the sort of new normal. There's definitely been a shift in our economy, and whether it's all about personalization and customization, which we'll talk more about that as we get into it, and or the builders are putting in specialty windows and unique window walls, etc. It really is not just your typical sash window that we were used to 20 years ago. We at Orion are especially excited about this new sort of trend because we love to work with our dealers on projects that require custom designs and custom components and one-time fabrications and tasks, and we do it all for you. And we're going to talk about some of those solutions and services today and give you some tips and tricks as you move into that sort of new normal of specialty. So really where you need to start with all of this is talking a bit about how to specify it and what you're trying to accomplish. Look at it big picture before we start to funnel down into the specifics and the details of the project. What are you trying to accomplish? Do you have that client that wants it all on one window? Function, aesthetics, privacy, view, sun control, transparency, you name it, she's trying to put it all into one window covering. So what does your client want? What are you trying to accomplish with the project? What are the expectations? How do you want it to function and perform? Because making the correct choices in specialty solutions is going to affect that dramatically. And then, how does it need to operate for the client? And sometimes it's even having a conversation about that. I was just on a job new project starting yesterday, and we spent a lot of time talking with the client about how she was going to use the room and how she wanted to operate her shades, because we were trying to decide whether we were going to do motorization or manual, or we were going to do a combination, even a combination on the same window. So you need to really look at these big picture questions first, and refer back to that strategy checklist where you're talking about function, what are your limitations to the plan, typically what the space you're working in, and the architecture that you have to deal with, your client expectations, and then styles and fabrics, and then it comes down to the decorative hardware and what you want to choose. But it really truly is all about lots of decisions that have to be made before you can even maybe measure the window, and certainly before you start talking about specifying the window. You have to first start with determining how much area you want to cover around that window. That's going to determine what your rod face is and your bracket to brackets, right? So how far past that opening you want to go. Is the treatment going to be functional or non-functional? If it's functional, what direction is it going to draw in, split left or right? Again, that affects, the type of solution and hardware that you might choose. Where are you going to mount it? This determines the finished length, but, are you going to be at the hardware? Typically remember, custom hardware solutions should never be mounted on a frame of a window unless you have obstructions or such as soffits that require you to do that. But the difference between custom and off the shelf, one of the ways is that it's never mounted on the frame. And you want to make sure there's enough wall space around the top of the window. There's enough room for finials at the top. You have to talk about how many layers you're going to be doing. Is there a blind? Is there drapery panels? That all falls into your projections and clearances, and how far out you're going to go. And then from there, you are going to be able to determine your rod width and your drapery length, and then move on to measuring the window. A lot of people think the first thing that you need to do when you come in on a custom project is measure the window, but unless you've made some of these other decisions, you really can overlook measurements to begin with, and it's really kind of redundant to have, because you're going to have to go back. So I usually like to know this information prior to actually measuring with the client. And one thing when you keep in mind and you're making these decisions with today's specialty windows and some of the challenges that we have, is you should know what span or bracket to bracket maximum is. So basically, span is the distance between brackets on a straight rod with nothing hanging on it before it starts to bend. And you want to remember that when you're figuring span and your number your brackets, you're going to always need brackets at stress points and at any time you have a splice in the rod. So if you're doing large windows, for example, and your rod is going to be base of finial to base of finial, let's say 120 inches. Well, there's probably going to be a splice in there just for shipping purposes. So where are you going to put that splice? Is it going to be in the center? Is it going to be off to the side? Where's that going to be? If you don't want to see a center bracket, maybe you're going to want to cut this into into 3 pieces and use more brackets. But again, anytime you have a stress point, that would be at the end or close to the end, particularly if you're pulling on a cord. And then at every splice, you have to have a bracket. Span is also, maximum is always determined by your diameter size. So know that your rods become more rigid as they increase in diameter. So you can do a larger span, say 70 inches, for example, on a 1-inch tube versus a 5/8 or a 1/2-inch tube. But typically, all rod strength is still dependent on the mounting surface. So you have to make sure your installers are using the right anchors, right toggle bolts, what substrate are you going into, and you have to know all that before you start making your choices in drapery hardware. When you are measuring, I think, and we've all, are aware of this, that, particularly with specialty windows and specialty hardware, it's all about accuracy. And it's critical that you have that down to 1/8 of an inch for sure. You want to do this always in some sort of standardized work order and note where you've measured. You want to maybe note some things about the space that's around that window. You're going to use that to help you determine, your bracket placement. And then again, if you're doing bays or corners or whatever, remember that angles are critical to that. Really all comes down to pre-planning and planning so that you don't have issues like this. Another aspect in today's new normal, if you will, especially windows, is we're seeing a movement toward more layers on the window. We've kind of been in a period where it was maybe a blind, maybe not a blind, and 2 stationary panels on either side with a decorative rod or a French pole, and that was it. We're seeing a movement away from that and starting to get a little bit more complex and starting to layer. Because the layers afford us the ability to meet more clients' expectations and wants and needs. If she needs privacy, we can do that with a blind underneath, but she wants to, soften the noise in the room, we can put drapery panels on it. We're seeing that we want to use more fabric, more pattern, more color. That's all leading toward the customer wanting us to start layering, whether it's, blinds and shears over traversing draperies, over cornices or box pleated valances and panels and shears, and maybe even a roller behind that. So you can do lots and lots of different layers, but be savvy of it and understand projection and clearances so you don't make some mistakes and the job can't go up. Part of dealing with specialty solutions is sort of having your toolbox handy. Lots of things can go into a designer's or a workroom's toolbox. The obvious are the Stanley. We like the Fat Max, the 25-foot steel tape in your protractor, in your measuring forms, and painter's blue tape always comes in handy. And a digital camera should be taking pictures of all your window openings, certainly before and afters, not only because of the safety issues in window coverings, but just visuals. Pictures worth 1,000 words always can come in handy during the fabrication process. You might also want to add to that toolbox, though, a roll of blackout lining if you're wanting to cut a silhouette so the client can get an idea how much light she's losing, or wants to visually see a mock-up of what the treatment might look like. Your craft or vellum paper. I like vellum paper for templating. I keep a bracket and a decorative hardware bracket and a ring key set of all the different rings, because each manufacturer has a different ring allowance or ring drop. Brackets are different for hard treatments. Same with, a stirrup bracket is not the same from Orion as it is from Helzer or Roley. The legs differ, the screw placement differs. If I have a key set that I can refer to and actually put the bracket up onto the wall to see if it's got enough place, it's going to work, that really does help me make my decisions in specifying what I'm going to choose for hardware. And then, of course, all your samples. Some other extras might be the Euro stick, particularly for large windows or specialty windows, because it's like an extra set of hands. It's stiff, and you just basically can, I think there's 2 or 3 different sizes, but it can go up to 10 or 12 feet, and you actually read it right here. So you can do tall windows, as you can see. You can do wide windows. And then this is also available from Roley Company, and this is their protractor. So if you're doing bays, corners, anything with angles, it's a great tool to have. And for your installers, you might want to put this in your installers as a Christmas present. I love this. This is an end bracket and center support installation template kit. And how many of us have eyeballed the top of the trim and said, oh, we're going over 3 inches, and then we kind of eyeballed where we're down from the ceiling 6 inches and make a mark. This allows you to mark up from the frame for center supports, down from the ceiling, and then the one that fits on the corner allows you to go up and over, for corners for your end brackets. And it's a great tool to have, and especially even for measuring. This is a great way to, if you need to make sure that bracket placement's going to work. I also have a contour gauge in my toolbox. This allows me to get a profile if I'm having to do cutouts, or I need to know how deep the reveal is for a variety of things. We use this a lot for crown moldings, for tiling, chair rails, stairs, anytime you might need to have to do a cutout. With today's technology, there's some great apps that you can take advantage of, particularly when it comes to measuring and specifying specialty solutions and hardware. This is My Measures Pro. It's a great measuring app. As you can see, it works in both metric and imperial. You can do it in different colors. You can mark out all your different measurements. You can do angles. It will also add sums for you. It will do square footage. It does volume. And it also will figure, if you take a straight on shot on a bay window and draw your lines for joining angles, it will figure an angle a degree for you. So let's talk about some specifics when it comes down to measuring for specialty solutions. And one of the things that most vendors, whether you're working in hard treatments or drapery hardware, require some sort of template. Ideally, we would always love that you sent us a sketch and or template versus just the measures, because we're creatives too. We see things much better visually. So you want to make sure you've got some sort of template kit in your car so that you can, when you're working, especially windows, you can take care of it. We use vellum. You can use craft paper. Push pins allow you to, push into the frame or into the wall if you're wanting to hold the paper. We also like blue painter's tape. Make sure that you know what the guidelines are for the manufacturers. We require templates on all our specialty hardware. We want a template of the entire opening. Now, don't just send us a half one and assume that that you gave us the measures on the left window and the center and not the right, that we should assume that it's the same. Make sure you're marking everything inside or outside so we know whether we have tight tolerances, and make sure that you've got the exact area that's going to be covered when you're working in outside mounts. Let us know what is the room side of the template that you're doing. Sometimes we, flip it, or where's the front of it if you're doing a bay window. Verify those measures that you took. Write them on the template for us. Note any angles, what the degrees are. If it's a angle top window, give us the apex. Make sure you always roll it, not fold it, and that you mark all the other particulars on it. The other thing is, please don't tape together sheets of newspaper and or sheets of whatever craft paper. Make sure the paper's wide enough and long enough for the template that you're making for us. Again, sometimes these bay windows can be large, but having one full template really does make a difference. Don't forget to measure your wall space around it too, and send a sketch of a bird's eye view. Sometimes that really also comes in handy. When we're doing templates for drapery hardware, usually how we start out is climb up to the window. Here's an eyebrow window. We'll place painter's tape on the wall first. Then that allows us to actually bring the paper up and secure the paper, and it's not folding and rolling on us, if you will. We use tailor's chalk if it's an outside mount, so we would come in and mark the window with the outside mount, rub and trace around the edge. And then we'd go in and mark maybe our medallion placement, or we'd mark our rod placement of where we want it, take it down, give all the measures, tell the workroom how far away from this edge on the trim we wanted the rod or the medallions. Couple of tips for you when you're doing templates is if you're not familiar with Install Solutions, you can send them all the measures and the angles, and they will do a great template for you that's can be sent off to the manufacturer. And any installer that I've ever talked to that has used Install Solutions and for their measurements have told me they've never had a problem. Measurements have always been accurate, the template has always been accurate, and the product has gone in without any issues. This is also another product from Rolly Company that I really like. This is grid tape. So it's an adhesive tape that's got pre-printed grid markings on it. And so you can use it for marking wall hole positions for whether you're for finials or for medallions or crown pieces. It's already pre-marked for you, so it's great for medallions. So if you know you want to be 5 inches apart, you know, here's my first medallion, you go over and cut 5 inches. You can literally peel this off, and it's adhesive, and your installer can come and put it right up onto the wall and then just drill their medallions right in. This is perfect for rod placement or medallions. So let's talk a little bit about arch windows and some of the measuring and specifying issues that for solutions for arch windows, and talk a little bit about arches first. Here's beautiful treatment, isn't it? With a swag, a cascade, and then the panel underneath it. When you've got large windows like this, which this one has mullions and muttons on it, but you might need to order the Palladian shelf from Lafayette to actually mount your hardware to if you want to go across at the bottom of the arch. Or another company that does something very similar to that, but it's actually square aluminum tubing, is the floating header, and it comes in, as you can see, different sizes. It's got an inside socket, almost like a gutter rail. It almost looks like a gutter rail, but it's four-sided. But you can apply Velcro to it, so you can apply multiple treatments to it, and you can also screw into it for rods and medallions, etc. Firmaflex is always great, if you're wanting to do arches and arch cornices. This is an arch measure from Rolly, and then Rolly also sells this notch strip, which I really like if you're trying to figure out how am I going to hang an arched drapery panel. Basically, you can Velcro this or screw this into the arch, and then you can get it notched or unnotched or with pinholes, and then you can just put your pins right in to the notch strip. Some other tools that come in handy for your specialty solutions is this is a flexi tape measure, so it really is nice to get what your diameter is going to be on that arch. And it's also great, by the way, for measuring beds and for bedding. And then I think a must-have is a dust plate protractor, particularly for bay angles. And when you flip it upside down, it'll tell you it'll give you the measures for cantering a bay. But I love that. Kerfex is a flex, which is you can order out of Kirsch, is another product for custom solutions that you can use to mount instead of putting eye screws in. Sometimes people are telling me, oh, well, I'm screwing cup hooks or eye screws into the top of my cornice, and I'm thinking, oh my God, how tedious is that? Notch strip or Kerflex is a nice alternative. When you're working in arch windows, remember that most top treatments that you're doing for a rectangular window can be adjusted to arches. So, you can be showing the client something, she's fallen in love with it, and you certainly can, by taking the proper measurements, able to translate that into an arched window. Another solution is look at having, ironwork done or tableaus to fill in the arch. Or here, this was actually just a glass block window, and the customer really wanted to create an arch. So here we've got, this is one of our arched rods with a decorative bracket and then the decorative finial on it. Remember, if you're doing drapery on arches, that your leading edges are always longer than your return edges, and that when you're doing rods, you're going to have to ask us to weld these rings. So you're going to have to not only tell us how many rings, so you're going to have to know from your workroom how many pleats and or leading edge. Don't forget about counting in the ring for a leading edge if you're going to do that, and or return edge, depending on how you're going to do that. So you're going to need to tell us the number of rings and then the spacing between the rings. And that's because then that will determine what your panel stack is going to be, finished panel stack. This is a great solution. Instead of having to come up around it, you could use a rod here, would be like our wood art rods or design art rods, or you can certainly use iron and panels. And then by these pole swags really does draw your eye to the arch in the center, but you're not having to deal with bending rods. So it's a nice solution maybe, for somebody who has to work within a budget. Another great look is maybe just using the hardware as the top treatment itself around the window. Here, the twine branch and the bird and the grapevine is just enough for that window. This was actually a award winner for Visions, IWCE, and for Decorating Den. It's a Decorating Den designer. Love this breakfast room. So you've got two flanking windows and then a Palladian in the center, and here it chose the great bird with on the branch finial that really falls into place with the hand painted mural that's next to it, and then shows a different actually alternating medallions into the arch. So there's lots you can do. So here you've got the leaf and then the grapes and then the bird at the top, the bird reflecting what was done in the finial. And who says that whether it's an eyebrow or an arch that you have to bend a rod or that you have to do a rod straight across? Here, this designer used our twisted poles and finials and decorative brackets and also medallions for the tie backs, and just did two short rods. By the way, a little bit more cha-ching factor here because you sold 4 finials. But, you know, again, here's where you ask all those questions. What are the expectations of the client? What does she need and want? This is a great look. I think better would have been if we had bent the rod around the arch or just done 3 short rods here, rather than, unfortunately, even with a decorative bracket, bringing the rod all the way across the arched doors and cutting that arch. You know, this is a very simple solution if they had bent the rod like this in the prior picture, correct? And then done straight rods in between. This happens to be Candace's eyebrow window, and she sent a template to Orion. They bent the rod to the exact eyebrow shape. She had the treatment made and hung the treatment in the eyebrow. Corners, seen a lot more corner windows because you're getting more view. Windows trends and window styles come and go, just like window treatment styles come and go. They're a difficult treatment to balance because what happens is you create a point of emphasis just by the nature of the corner here, and you have to make a choice not only in hardware but in style of the window treatment to create that point of emphasis and not have a gap there, actually, so that it takes away from it. So what you really want to do is take separate measures so that you can recognize if there's going to be any kind of issues here, and then also make the client aware, if there are, that sometimes the treatments will interfere with each other, particularly depending on what this window to corner measurement might be on each side. When you're doing corner windows, you're going to want to use miters, and you're going to want to use one treatment. You know, here we have a panel, a cafe, but we did 1 valance versus 2 valances because it's seamless, and here's that point of emphasis. And then the miter also allows you to maybe get away with, depending on the weights, with not having to put brackets here. But again, miters require much more accurate measures than if you're doing something like an elbow with a hinge to it. When you are working in corner windows, you've got your butt and your bypass, and basically the butt bypass describes the fact that one rod extends complete into the corner and the other one butts into it, and what happens is it throws your rods off center. So if you're doing two pairs, you'd have to adjust the finished width so that the left and right panels of each pair might be a different size depending on the size of your windows. So you should always be aware of that measurement and how you're going to do that if you're going to do something that's butt and bypass. So when do you use miters? You know, obviously corner windows, right? But they work best when the treatment is non-functioning. Because it's definitely a stress point, and when they're non-functioning, you aren't having somebody pulling something back, let's say on a daily basis. It's a less expensive option than doing a movable hinge and additional brackets, etc. You also can find miters. You get a wider choice of hardware. You can certainly miter wood. You can do iron mitered corners. Sometimes it gives you a little bit more flexibility also because you can cut the miter on site if you've got a really good installer. For us, if you're wanting to have us miter our iron or our wood, if you're using an interior elbow, then the rod would need to be mitered, number one. We use 45 and 90 degrees as our standard elbow or miter. If it's a different angle, you need to tell us that what that angle is, and then you also, there's an additional upcharge for that. Some corner solutions and design options, both for hardware and window treatments. First of all, you don't necessarily, when you're working in corner windows and or bays, want to do this, which is put, two medallions together. Would have been much better if you had one medallion and you'd filled that wall space. It's kind of a little don't. Here are some solutions that you can get with our hardware or in most other manufacturers. We can custom bend for a corner. We can do, here's an elbow, then you would have straight rods and you can, mount this. Again, you're going to have a bracket here and a bracket there. I like this one. I use this one a lot. So it's a movable hinge, so your angle doesn't have to be critical, and then you've got your 90 degree or your 45 that you can slide the rod into, and then with, set it with an Allen screw. This is an inside elbow that falls, this is from the Italian collection, and this would fall inside the tube cuts. It's a little more seamless, if you will. But remember, on corner windows, you always want to create a point of emphasis. And if you're doing medallions, here's a little tip. Cut a block into a triangle, and then you mount that into the corner, screw it into the corner. Now you've given me a flat square place to mount my medallion post into. Great look. Again, from one of our Deck Den interior designers. Bays. Let's talk a little bit about bays. Again, it's critical for us that you give us our angles, that you give us the measures on all three sides, that you measure each window individually. They're not always the same size. Don't assume that they are. Make sure you give us wall space between the measures. The depth of a bay can be critical. You need to tell us whether it's a wall measure or not. What are those measures that you're giving us? But we can typically bend most of our rods. If you provide us with a template, that is definitely the ideal scenario. You need to tell us whether you're giving us wall measurements or rod measurements, and a rod measurement would be to the base of the finial. You need to give us both angles, what the rod size is, and what your bracket choice is and your finial choice. We can bend any rods out of our Iron Art collection, our Burgundy collection, the Italian collection, and the Tropical collection. So we can give you quite a selection of rods and solutions. So this is a great chart to just kind of use, make sure you're giving us all three measurements, and then angles. At the very least, we need those 5 things. But you also want to make sure, did you take those measurements at the wall or at the floor? Sometimes everybody uses the card trick and does it at the floor, and then there's a baseboard that's involved, and sometimes that baseboard can come out as much as an inch, and that will change your angle measurement and your wall measurement. So you need to tell us that. And you also want to predetermine where you're going to place your finial and your brackets. So if I'm going to have a splice here, I need 2 brackets. And do I have enough room to put 2 brackets here? And what's my projection? Do I need to project out further because my brackets are hitting each other? So again, that's where that key set comes in handy. The other thing is you might find that you want to use a bypass bracket where the splice is, just for added support. But it can turn out to be beautiful treatment. See, and I'm sure they predetermined their bracket placement, so they knew on their bracket placement, they knew what the width of this each side of the pole swag was, and from the center came out there to hide those brackets. Again, you don't necessarily have to go all 3 sides of a bay. You could just do 2 and eliminate all that issue with angles, but you also have to make sure you have enough wall space and enough projection so that that finial doesn't hit that wall. Doors and sliders. One solution that I always love and I know it's not a hardware solution, but we're always trying to a decorative hardware solution, but we're always trying to figure out how to handle bays or where there's a door in the center and two windows, or, you know, whatever door, atrium door scenario. Look at Rolly swing door hardware. There's a video on how it works. It's a relatively inexpensive way to basically what you're looking at is you place a hinge on to the door, and then you have a sliding hinge on the back of your treatment, and so when you open the door, the treatment actually opens with the door. So what you're looking at the bottom here is, it looks like one treatment. There's actually a hinge here, behind here, and then it splits open here, so they can open the door, and then the treatment actually folds back in. Certainly, when you're wanting to do doors or sliders, you want to look at a bypass system, and our bypass system uses the C-ring and a smaller stirrup bracket that can set the rod in it, because the rod will tend to fall out. And that way you can do, you know, a pair of draperies or a one-way panel that will go across a center support. What you can use bypasses also for large window scenarios where you want to do hand-drawn batons, though sometimes multiple widths when you're getting into 8 and 10 widths, and hand drawing them is not necessarily the most ideal scenario. That's where traversing systems really do come into play. But as you can see, your end brackets would have a larger stirrup, and then where the center bracket is on the C-ring, it's a smaller stirrup, and it bypasses it. But remember, and this holds true for any hardware that you're using C-rings with and bypasses, that when you're opening and closing them, it pulls better when there's more, when the leading edge has force and the rings are spaced apart. Okay, when you're opening pleats, sometimes it'll tend to bunch because the rings, when they're passing over the bracket, they get caught a little bit. So it's not going to be that smoothness that the client is anticipating if there wasn't a center support bracket there. They can definitely catch. Okay, and you also, so you might want to be siliconing, and they're also going to need help if she's going around a corner or in a bay or something. The other thing to remember is the C-ring needs, the eye of the C-ring needs to be parallel with the wall, all right, to make it function properly. So what it requires is weight, and it requires drapery rate. And if you're doing a functioning shear, sometimes it's too light, and again, they aren't going to move as well as if it was aligned drapery that adds more weight and allows the ring to hold, to the eye to be parallel with the wall. The other thing is when it's lighter weight, we just tend to, human nature, tend to lift up the leading edge as we're pulling it across, and that will also cause it to catch. So let's talk about medallions as a specialty solution. We're selling a lot of medallion treatments these days to do both you know, stationary looks on some of these window walls or specialty windows. Like this one. Here what you're seeing is our new, some of our new medallions from our new design art collection, and these are wood. And there's, we can also do iron, and there's several really interesting finishes and dual finishes with medallions, so they can offer a wide range. But, you know, basically a medallion has a post, a face, and a wall plate. So you have to know wall plate size and how it's being screwed into the wall, so you know where to install it and that you have enough space and that you can do it. When you're measuring for medallions, you want to definitely, first of all, measure the area that you want to cover. So you're going to have an idea what you want your stack on your panel to be, correct? Finish stack. And then you're going to want to measure how many medallions you want up there. And remember, then what you would do is take your area to be covered and divide that in by the number of attachment points or medallions. And you'll always have one less space than you will have medallions. So in this case, you have 5 medallions and you have 4 spaces. The other thing you'll want to do is measure from the ceiling down or from the floor up, so you know where to place these medallions. And as you can see, that's where that grid tape really comes in handy, because you can actually, pre-mark the grid tape in the workroom or for your installer, and they just have to put it up and then drill in and peel it away. Some great looking medallion treatments by some of our designers and dealers. Now here's a great idea for the staggered medallions, and accents the fact that you have an arch. Or Susan Keefe does some beautiful medallion things, and have this sort of trade ceiling that angles up with an arch window, and she did these panels and then the shade underneath. It's a great look. Here's a couple of medallion tips for you. Remember, you've got a face plate, a back plate, and then you've got your post. So, how do you get that medallion? Some people have tied it with tabs. Some people, hook it. There's just, some people Velcro it, and it can kind of get messy. But consider an S-hook. You can do an S-hook for you. You can put that around the base, and then you can actually put a drapery pin right into the bottom of the S-hook. Or ask your workroom to fabricate a medallion or a grommet, where you want to go into the medallion. Again, this is going to take a little pre-planning and talk to the workroom about what that grommet placement is going to look like, but that's a great idea. Another solution might be 3D hardware. You've got tight space. You don't want to just do inside wall sockets. You want something more decorative. So our 3D drapery hardware actually has a bend in it. And so the finial comes in front of the rod. And you can do these both in single and double sets. And in our Iron Art and our Italian collection. So the guidelines for that for you is that when you give us the rod length, it's from the bend to the bend. There's typically 3.5 inches between the rod and the back side of the finial base. And from the bracket to the end of the rod is 2.5 inches. So again, you need to know that for your rod placement, correct? And so when you order your rod, you're going to order the rod length tip to tip, and you can do this in you can do the 3D hardware in almost in our Iron and Italian collections. It's typically done with a 1-inch diameter round hollow. You can also do it in your hammered. As I said, you can also do it in singles and doubles. So here, let's talk next about some accessories that are that we have and other hardware people have that can give us some solutions for some of the specialty windows and challenges that are out there. So, there's all kinds of different rings out there, all different types, smooth, twisted, round, ridged. You can get it with a clip, but remember, clip rings, and I'm not a fan of clip rings, add about 1/2 inch to your finished length of your treatment. So I really think that eyelet rings work best. They're particularly because they're made for drapery pins and they're designed to work with drapery. Here's a S or a shepherd's hook with an eye for a different look if you wanted for a ring also. And that sort of concept was done here by Tanya Lebov in these specialty hardware that we actually made for her. We did the bracketing, and then we did this really interesting ring, and this is really nothing more than a grommet flat panel, and then the finial was one large ring, and she draped the as you can see, she draped this over panel through the finial and then over here to the tie back. It's a really great look, and then I love the ring, very contemporary. Don't forget about batons if you're talking hand-drawn, whether it's iron or whether it's some of our nude batons from Design Art. You can also get them in clear or fiberglass if they're not to be shown. And you can also, there's a couple of different types of adapters to it. I think this one is the better one. When you're looking for decorative solutions, particularly if you're looking for something for traditional, in our new Design Arts, we've got, for example, very decorative inside mount sockets here. Here it's in a dual finish, so we've gold leafed and walnutted on this rod and used a fluted rod. We also are doing hand carved rings. We're doing custom inlaid. We're doing new finials, and we're even doing what we're calling decals. There are several decals that can be placed on finials and rods and done in custom finishes. You can also might want to consider these embossed cornices and crowns. They can come, both for motorization, traversing. They come with or without dust caps. You can do single embossed or double embossed, and all of them can be bent for specialty windows. Here's an example in Arizona, triple cornices. Or crown pieces. In this case, it's holding a swag and a gathered panel. There's a rod behind it, but she has a decorative piece in front. Or in our Design Art, you might want to consider some of our centerpieces. So this is would be used for a rod that would be spliced in the center, and you have a decorative centerpiece. And again, available in 56 finishes or custom matched or excuse me, dual finishes. Here's another one of our crown or centerpieces. This was a great pencil pleated drapery panel so that the pleating shows through the decorative ironwork, the filigree ironwork. This is what it looks like in the product category. And then this is what the return is, because I love the fact that you get that sort of half piece. It's not just a flat piece back there. You get decorative a return on it also. Or again, here we have a specialty window, and they did it really, instead of medallions, maybe that would have been the first thought, it's a tab drapery that actually is a rod that is, bent and curved from our collection, and then panels hung on it. Embraces. This is an embrace. It has a swivel hook on it. The picture's a little off, I apologize. And then it's a big shepherd's hook or J. And what's really great about this is these mount behind your drapery panel. You pick it up, it catches the drapery back, let's say on a door in a bedroom where the client wants to open it up during the day, and then she can just let it go and it falls back and closes the window up at night. So very European, and not a lot of people do this. We can do this in any of our finishes. It's in the book, and the dimensions are in it, but I've used this a lot in bedrooms or where the client wants to open and close. Fabric strap tiebacks just don't work as well as an embrace does. Swing arms. Have you thought about swing arms? Now remember, with swing arms, you're going to want to look in our catalog to know what the maximum weight is going to be on the diameter of the rod and on the length of the swing arm. But here, this actually happens to be Toby Fairley's house. She has a door, and she did swing arms instead of one rod all the way across, so that, as you can see, it opens up. You can do it very plain and simple, or you can do it decoratively. When you're specifying swing arms from us, you're going to want to let us know whether it's going to be a right or a left. What's the orientation? We need to know the length, width and finial included. And so the measurements are basically based on the from the end of the back plate to the outer tip of the finial. We have several different mounting plates, and they can be interchangeable, so let us know which mounting plate you want to use, and if you want to use a support bracket. And where would you use a support bracket? As you can see right here, she has a support bracket at each end, and so they catch it. and then you just lift it up and open it. Typically the standard projection is about a 1/2 inch. Again, you're going to want to make sure that you 1/2 inch is going to work for you, or you might need to ask for a custom projection, though it really is not going to work well because of the hinging to the back plate. And you can use any finial, and then you would just take the swing arm price and add the finial to the total price. Has anybody used this? I've used this several times. I love this. So this is their Roman shade rod. It's 5/8 inch diameter. There's several different finials. This happens to be the French brass bullet. You get the rod, the finial, the brackets, and the rings. And the difference in this and how what makes it work is the eye has been turned 90 degrees. And you basically do a old school Roman shade mounted on a wood headrail, maybe with a cord cleat or a cord lock system if you want, or you can do this even mock. And then you're going to screw the eye into the wood, and then you're going to put up the supports just like you would decorative hardware with the brackets and the rod. So again, it adds that little bit of finishing touch to the Roman shade rod. And something that you might not know we carry, but that I think anytime you're doing stationary panels, and particularly if they're hand-drawn panels, you should always order a master carrier kit. Because basically what you're going to be getting is one standard master and one, that's straight, and then you're going to get your overlap master, and then you get 4 rings, 2 for each carrier. And what that allows you to do is if it was a stationary panel, it straightens out the leading edge. So you know how sometimes that first ring wants to twist, and so then what happens is your leading edge twists in toward the window. This helps eliminate it. And certainly if you're doing hand drawn, because then you attach your baton back here and they just pull much easier with this. And we do this in all our finishes, and they're available in all our collections, whether it's design art, iron art, wood art. You can order them separate. So this is a great thing to have. You should just be specifying this as part of your stationary and hand-drawn, panels, as it certainly is going to make it easier. See how that has already twisted in, that doesn't have one. And here she spent the extra money to put a banding on the leading edge, and sometimes it just doesn't show. One of our specialty services that you might not be aware of is that we do custom matching and finishes. We definitely are sort of making a bigger splash with it in the new design art collection, but we've been doing custom matching and custom finishes in all our lines for a long time with our clients. So basically, if you want to spec a Ben Moore or a Sherwin-Williams paint, you just would specify that on your order, and then we would hand finish and hand paint those finishes for you. So if any kind of color matching service or custom finishes, we can do it. You send us a swatch, tell us what you're looking for a finish. We can send you a strike off if it's something that's a bit complicated. We love doing customization and personalization. We're all about that. And then to finally sort of finish it up, because finally spring has come to the Midwest and some other areas of the country, I wanted to talk briefly about outdoor, because I'm a firm believer that we should be bringing our drapery products and window covering products into the outdoor realm. It's a huge revenue potential. So we do outdoor finishes on any of our iron art. Our outdoor finish is powder coated, just as if you were getting powder coated outdoor furniture. You just need to specify that you want the outdoor finish on your work order. There is an upcharge, but we can do it in all of our on all our iron products and our iron finishes. So as you start thinking more and more about drapery and decorative hardware and moving it to the outdoors, I wanted to show you a couple of really intriguing outdoor solutions that might solve an issue for you or might get you a job. So this is actually was posted recently on one of our Facebook groups, and this is Tim Sanders, and his solution, as you can see, you've got a brick wall here, and he had iron drapery rods and basically essentially a cafe curtain that we're extending over here to the corners, and then they're tied back to keep them from blowing in the wind. And he was like, how am I going to, tie this back? So what he used, here's the panel close up, was a snap system that he screwed into the brick wall and then put the opposite, the male-female snap system, and it snapped the tie back into the masonry. Thought that was genius. This, I've actually found this in some of my surfing of the web, if you will, and thought what an ingenious way to make a roof pergola, and it's nothing more than a track, as you can see, that's been painted. So it's basically an Architrack or 93001, the tracks that we use in all our fascia systems. So you could even do this decoratively. You've got your ball bearing carriers coming down, and then you're actually using a cubicle hook, and then these are rods. This was a flat piece of fabric that had rod pockets sewn in it, and then they actually threaded them through the rods, and then it slides open and closed as a pergola roof attachment. One of the biggest issues with outdoor draperies is they want to blow around. Today in Illinois, the wind is pretty crazy right now. It's like 25 or 35 miles an hour. So your, draperies on your pergola or porch or patio are blowing like crazy. So here's an idea that we can certainly custom do for you in the finish of the rods that you want. What you're going to be using these are actually plastic tarp grommets. You can buy them on Amazon. You want to use the plastic probably versus the metal because it's not going to rip and tear the fabric. You're going to apply the grommet at the bottom of the hem, so you've got a hole to it. Here you can see it tied. This is nothing but a bungee ball, and then you've got a D-ring here. So we could certainly do something decoratively for you, and then this actually anchors your drapery down, and you can mount it into wall. You could do it into the floor, the deck, into concrete on the patio. Again, just a masonry drill and you're good to go. So those are some of our specialty solutions and services, and so hopefully gave you some tips and tricks and ideas. Is there any questions? I'm going to call those up right now. And while we do that, we're going to be giving away, speaking of rods and rings, we're going to be giving away one rod set and one ring set. So what you have is you'll have on the ring set, you'll have a set of rings in every size that we make. And so that'll be able to give you a start to your key set and also to help figure ring drop and ring allowance. And then on the rods, we're going to give you a rod key set that has every diameter of rod that we sell in the iron rods, which is also great because this is also a great way to help your customer visualize when you're talking about a 1 inch versus a 5/8 or a 3/4 or 1.5 inch. This is really a great visualization tool. Okay, let's see, what do we have? Are the 3D measurements guidelines in the catalog? Mary's asking. Yes, they are. We have a new price list and a new general product catalog that's out. If you would like us to send you that, Mary, just type into your question box and we'll get that sent off to you. We also have a new Design Arts catalog and price list coming out too. And the Master Carrier Kit is found in the catalog. And Ella, can you tell me, would you happen to know what page that is offhand for any reason? I'm not quite sure. Is there any way to rewatch these webinars? Great question, Linda. After we edit and convert all the webinars, which, by the way, takes about 72 hours because you can't use your computers when you're editing something on it, we post them all in two places. On our YouTube channel, so you can go to Iron Art by Orion and, you know, search for that, and we have a YouTube channel. Or we have a page on our blog, Spark, and we post all of the webinars there, and they're all up there, and you can rewatch it at your convenience on demand. And how do you get to Spark? You can, you know, search or Google Spark. That's the name of our blog. Or you can go to our website, ironartbyorion.com, and at the top you can click on the blog, right? By the way, the 3D measurement guidelines are on page 25 of the new catalog, Mary, if you happen to have it, as is the Master Carrier Kit. All right, so let's see who we have for winners. So the winner of the ring set is Dolores Krupp. Congratulations, Dolores. And by the way, Dolores, will you type into the question box your address so that we can ship this out to you? And the winner of the rod set is Karen Sanders. And could you do the same, Karen? And you want to see the tableau slide. Easiest way to do that is go up here. Somebody wanted to see the slide again. Probably wants to take a screenshot. Right, Bonnie? Let me see. There we go. That's the one you want? So this is custom artwork, and then there's a rod across the bottom of it. Can you order the rod and ring set? Yes, you can, Monica. In fact, let me send you the information on that. And I think we just put those together, and we're still trying to figure out how much that's going to be. But it's a great thing to throw in the back of your car and have. Or where I use it most often is, you know, 10 o'clock at night when you're trying to figure out what rod size you might need. We'll send you out that catalog, Deb. Thanks for typing in. Any more questions before I let you all go? Thanks so much for joining us. And next month, I think we're going to talk motorization. Bye-bye.